Sarah Seeley from the Ohio Young Birders Club, and this is Dr. Lonnie Thompson from the Bird Polar Research Center at Ohio State University. He won the National Science Award for Climatology. Dr. Thompson, what is the difference between climate and weather?
Well, I think when we talk about weather, we talk about the high-frequency events, the day-to-day changes that occur. And climate, on the other hand, is the average of weather. And usually we look at 30-year averages of weather. I think probably Mark Twain said it best. He said, climate is what we expect, and weather is what we get.
Okay. What is the greenhouse effect?
Greenhouse effect is due to greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, and they are both natural and man-made. The human part, the man-made greenhouse gases, are the gases coming, mainly CO2, coming from burning petroleum and fossil fuels, coal, oil, gas, and releasing that into the atmosphere.
How much has the global temperature risen in the last 100 years?
It's risen since 1880 to 2012 by about 0.85 degrees C. So that's about 1.23 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay. Does the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere go up every year?
Yes, the carbon dioxide has been increasing ever since we started burning fossil fuels, since the Industrial Revolution, but particularly in the last 50 years. So it's been increasing, and currently it's increasing at about a rate of 2 parts per million by volume every year.
Wow. How do we know that the pre-industrial greenhouse gases and temperatures were?
Well, we are very fortunate to have recorders on the Earth that have recorded the climate long before humans invented thermometers and weather stations. So we can use corals on the oceans, we can use tree rings on land, and of course the ice cores, which is what we study. And the ice cores are unique in these recorders in that it's the only recorder we have that actually records the atmosphere of the past. And the bubbles in the ice is trapped the atmosphere of 1,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, 800,000 years ago. And so we can extract those bubbles and we can measure CO2, methane, nitrous oxide, all the greenhouse gases that we're concerned about today. And so we can look at what the natural variation was before humans started impacting that. So pretty much anything that's in the atmosphere gets archived on the glacier. So we can see when lead was put into gasoline. We can see when the Clean Air Act was passed and the lead was taken out. So anything that's up there is recorded. And so there's a wonderful history frozen in time.
What are the impacts of climate change on weather?
Climate change can impact particularly us with extreme temperatures. And just last year, Australia had to put 2 new colors on their weather map because the temperatures reach values that they haven't measured since they've been measuring temperatures in Australia. So the extremes of the change of the mean state is, particularly in weather events, is something we're very concerned about.
What is the impact on climate change on water resources?
Well, the fact that you change precipitation, you change the amount of water that's available in streams and how much water over what time periods, the floods and droughts, very important. But you also change the amount of snow that you have in a given year. And that can have huge impacts on water levels in the Great Lakes. In fact, if you look at the projections by 2100, the Great Lakes will be 1 to 2 feet lower than they are now. And that has all kind of ramifications on water supplies and shipping in the Great Lakes. So the thing about climate is it impacts just about everything that we do. If you look at the future, the things we're concerned about are diseases. Some diseases like malaria, carried by mosquitoes, cholera, which is spreads with function of warm water. One of the things we need to do is to look in the past, look at the history of humans, and see just what role did climate play in diseases in the past.
Will or has global warming affected migration paths?
It changes wind patterns, and that's one of the things that we're concerned about. So it could change the migratory paths of birds.
What do you say to people who absolutely think that global warming doesn't exist?
It's very important to look at the data, and not just some data, but you have to look at the balance of evidence of change. And it's not just the rise in temperatures that we see on the planet. It is the loss of things like sea ice occurring in the Arctic. It's the loss of glaciers around the world. It's the fact that if we have proxy records of temperature that go back over 2,000 years that show that the 21st century is the warmest that it's been in 2,000 years. We have the fact that our oceans are getting warmer. I mean, we've been measuring the temperatures down to 10,000 feet in the oceans, and they're all warming. And if you look at sea level is rising, and the rate of sea level rise is accelerating. And the reason that's happening is because if you warm the oceans, they expand. If you melt the ice caps and the ice glaciers, that water goes in the oceans and sea level rises. So all of these things are the evidence of change taking place.
If we stop all greenhouse gas emissions, will global climate change stop?
No. And this is what makes this problem so more difficult. It'll take another 20 to 30 years before we see the full impacts of the greenhouse gases we've already emitted into the atmosphere, because there's a lag in the system. It takes a long time to warm up ice sheets, a long time to warm up oceans. So even if we were to stop producing greenhouse gases tomorrow, the impact of the things we've already done would make it such that climate would continue to change. And many of the glaciers that we currently are studying will be gone because we've already built in that change. But the longer we wait to do something about it, the greater that change is going to be, and the more we're going to have to do to adapt to that change.
If you could get every person to do one thing to prevent the melting of ice caps, what would it be?
Well, I think if there was one thing, I would say look at your politicians and vote. And look at their stance on issues of climate change. That's probably the most important thing that we can do to change the trajectory that we're on. But there are a lot of things we can do as individuals, and those changes they're taking place. I mean, conservation, increases in efficiency, smaller cars, hybrid cars, electric cars. I mean, the choices we make every day when we buy things. Look for those Energy Star products, the things that still give you your life, give you your quality of life, but use less energy in doing that.
Well, thank you for your time, Dr. Thompson.
Well, thank you.
And for Ohio Young Birders, I'm Sarah Seeley.